So in this next variation, we're going to look and see what happens if the moves vary slightly. So let's say they go ahead and they take the knight, as in the last example. Of course, we pretty much have to make the same follow-up move. We give the check with the queen. Now, instead of blocking with the pawn, as we saw last time, then immediately losing the pawn and the rook, they have another option. They can move their king. But this is even worse. If they decide to not lose the rook and move their king, well, they're going to get checkmated virtually by force in any number of ways. I will show you one way in which the checkmate can easily happen. So now we take this pawn with check, and notice the king only has one move because none of their pieces have been developed yet. Every single square is a checking square, and there's nothing to block the check with. So the king has to go to f7. And by going to f7, they allow us to play bishop to bishop to c4, and we make this check. And now it would be checkmate if not for black being able to play pawn to d5. So it's the only move. So all these moves are forcing, right? So black has made the mistake not only of playing f6, they've also made the mistake of taking our knight and allowing that sacrifice to happen. As we will see, the best thing to do is simply to lose the pawn and not take the knight. But most opponents will not do that. If they don't know enough about chess to not play f6, they're also not going to know enough about chess 90% of the time to not take the knight that is offered as a sacrifice. All of these moves afterwards are forced once this chain of events begins. So they have to play b5. We can, of course, take that with the bishop because it's protected. The queen can't do anything. They can't do anything. And now it is check. And the king has nowhere to go except for out. Of course, the bishop's not going to want to block here because it would be checkmate, and they would lose a piece in addition to the fact that it's checkmate. So the king has to go out. Now, once the king comes out here and we have this queen so close to the king, this is very, very dangerous. You don't even need to calculate. You know that you're going to be able to get a checkmate, or if not a checkmate, you're going to be able to win an enormous amount of material in any chess game where the king gets out into the center like this and you have your queen out. I mean, there's just so many different ways to win that the only thing the opponent will be able to do 90% of the time is throw away material to stop checkmate, and then of course they're going to lose the game anyway. So in this case, we can play any number of moves. The best thing to do is to move our queen over to g3 and make another check. If we don't do that, if we do something like play h4 because we want to bring our pawn up and make an easy checkmate over on this side, the problem with that is it gives our opponent time to play bishop to d6 and attack our queen, and then it's not as easy to make the checkmate. We have to retreat, and they can maybe wriggle out of this. And so we want to play queen to g3. It's not the only move we can play, but it's of the best moves. And the king really has not very many places to go. They can go to f6. I'm going to show what happens if they go to h6. You go here. Now, of course, this is a really bad move, but a lot of people will play it, especially if you're in blitz and your opponent is now nervous. They're on the run. They're trying to make their moves maybe quickly. We can give this check. d3. Our bishop, which hasn't even had to be moved, can make a check because the king is out in the middle. This is one of the reasons why it's so dangerous to have your king out in the middle of the board, besides the obvious reason that it's easier to make checks. But you can do things like this where you don't need to move the piece, you just uncover checks by moving pawns. I mean, there's just so many ways to win. And there's not much that he can do. If he can move over here, we can follow up with this check. Not very many places for him to go now because our bishop is covering this diagonal. Our queen is covering all of these other squares. If he goes up there, then he gets checkmated right there. And then if he goes down here, then there are other ways to attack him. For example, we can go like this. If he chooses to block that, well, then we just immediately can win a piece. And also make a checkmate the next move. If he plays this, we're not going to be able to make checkmate the next move. Actually, we can play checkmate by going here if he does that. So there's another way to make checkmate. There are multiple different ways to make checkmate. In this type of a game, the Damiano defense, you don't need to calculate every single potential checkmate because there's so many ways to win once the king gets taken out of his safe place. Check. Excuse me, we're not going to look at that one. We're going to look at king to e7. Check. You're basically going to get a checkmate by force one way or another. Okay, and we're going to look at more and more ways that you can make the checkmate as the course goes on. Okay, so the better thing to do, if you take the knight from black's point of view, if you choose to take the knight here, is to play g6. Even though you're going to lose this pawn and your rook, you did get a knight. You are going to get a little bit of counterplay, and the game will continue. You will continue into a losing game, but it's better than just moving the king and then getting checkmated right afterwards. Okay, and the next lesson we're going to look at another way that black can play this.